Hi, fifth graders. Welcome to reading. We're going to be reading a few more pages from the story Moses and Joshua that we started on Tuesday. So just to quickly refresh our memory, we have our main character, Mark, in Mrs. Morrison's fifth grade class. And Mrs. Morrison's class, they are going to be putting on a fun play. And he wants to audition and try out for the part of Joshua. So we know that he memorized all of his lines and he went to tryouts and he was very confident about it. And then he started to get nervous because he sees Mrs. Morrison and the principal frowning a little bit and whispering things to each other. They don't look very happy. And where we left off was Mrs. Morrison started to tell everybody who got which part, and she is about to announce who is going to play the main character of Joshua. And let's see if Mark gets this part. So we are going to start reading on page 328. So make sure you have your book open to page 328. And like I said before, if you prefer to read alone, that's totally okay. Go ahead and pause this video, read the pages until we're reading 4 pages. So until page 331. And then go ahead and complete the workbook page 129. And then resume the video to go over the answers and see how much you were able to answer. Okay, so otherwise I will go ahead and get started with page 328. Everybody else was leaving and a bunch of them whispered to me that they thought that I would get the part, but Mrs. Morrison asked me to stay and talk to her. I stood around until everybody else had left. As soon as the rest were all gone, Mrs. Morrison said, "Mark, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Worrying and praying, more worrying than praying. I'm afraid." Now I could hardly stand it. "Well, what is it?" I asked. She stopped a little, and then she said, "I'm afraid that we can't give you the part of Joshua." "You mean I don't do a good job with Joshua's lines?" I could hardly believe it. "Oh, no, it's not. It isn't that. It's just that we need someone a little different for this part." "Well, Mark, I'm just going to put this to you straight. I'm afraid that we need someone a bit bigger than you. Mr. Alexander and the other teachers and I all talked about it after tryouts last night. And you're an excellent speaker, Mark. Excellent. But since you are smaller than most of the other boys, and your voice is, well, quite a bit higher." "Yes, ma'am." My eyes stung some, but I wasn't going to let her see me cry. "And after talking, the other teachers and I decided that we should use Randy Ortega from the 6th grade. "Randy Ortega?" I said it so loudly I almost scared myself. "I never hear him say anything. How could he do all the shouting that Joshua has to do?" "Well," she said in a quiet voice, "Randy is a big boy with a deeper voice, and I think he could do a good job with some help. I know he's shy, but this might be just what he needs." "But what about me?" I asked. "I mean, what part do I get now? Can I at least be Caleb or somebody like that?" "Well," she hesitated, "we would rather you be an understudy and a coach. I wasn't sure that Randy could learn his lines well without a good coach." To pause here, an understudy is a person who has to... The understudy is basically the substitute for the actor. So, for example, if Randy becomes sick on the night of the play, then the understudy will be the person who will play the part instead. Okay? Just in case. "I wasn't sure that Randy could learn his lines well without a good coach, I'll say," I said. "Mark, I won't tolerate that kind of spirit." "Yes, ma'am. And we thought that you could do the job," she went on. "You can also be an Israelite. Since you'll be an understudy, you'll have to have a non-speaking part." Okay, so let's see what happened here. Alright, so Mark didn't get the part, and how does he feel? He feels really upset. He thinks that he deserves it. And what's the reason that he didn't get the part? Yeah, so Mrs. Morrison said they need somebody who's bigger and has a deeper voice, and the guy who got the part is a boy named Randy. And let's see what happens next. Mrs. Morrison, I can't, I said. I just can't help Randy when he took that part away from me. Please don't ask me to do that. Well, Mark, she said slowly, first of all, let me say that Randy didn't take your part away from you. That was a part you were never promised. And let me say furthermore that before you say you can't, you should ask the Lord if He wants you to. Because if He does, He will give you the strength to do it. Yes, ma'am. I turned slowly and left. He doesn't look very happy. Well, I didn't pray about it. Not really. I put off helping Randy on purpose. And he was too shy to ask me. When the first rehearsal came, we hadn't gotten together even once. I sneaked into the back to see the first rehearsal. It was only for the people with speaking parts. Randy was still reading his part from the paper. He didn't have any expression. And he couldn't pronounce a bunch of the words. He wasn't into the character at all. Mrs. Morrison was pretty patient with him, but I could tell she was kind of frustrated. Deep down inside, I felt smug. I tried to warn her, I thought. Now, what does this word mean? I felt smug. Some of the synonyms we have are similar words, are like proud, cocky, conceited. For example, he was smug about his successes, like feeling a little bit overly proud and kind of like, I was right the whole time. I told you so. That kind of attitude is how Mark is feeling right now. So, has he been helping Randy? Nope, not at all. Behind the scenes. The next day, Mrs. Morrison called me up to her desk again. I was hoping I wouldn't have to talk to you about the play again, Mark, she said. But it looks as if you haven't been willing to help Randy, as I asked you. Let me ask you a question. Did you even pray about working with Randy? I just looked down. She sighed, but she still sounded patient, and still kept her voice soft, so the rest of the class couldn't hear what she was saying. Maybe you will pray about it tonight, but before you do, read some verses. I'll find the reference and give it to you before you leave today. I didn't much care anymore. I'd gotten plenty of verses in my life. She put a piece of paper on my desk later while she was checking homework. All it said was, read Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 23 through 28 tonight. I stuck the paper away in my math book. I was just opening that book to do my homework when Dad called us all for devotions. There was the paper with the note on it, so I grabbed it and took it with me. Can we read this for devotions tonight, Dad? I asked. And I explained how Mrs. Morrison had said I should read that before praying about helping Randy with his lines. So Dad read it in his quiet voice. Right, so this is the Deuteronomy verses. And I besought the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, thou hast begun to shew thy servant thy greatness, and thy mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or in earth, what can do according to thy works, and according to thy might? I pray thee, let me go over, and see the good land that is beyond Jordan, that goodly mountain, and Lebanon. But the Lord was wroth with me for your sakes, and would not hear me. And the Lord said unto me, let it suffice thee. So, let it be enough for you. Speak no more unto me of this matter. Let thee up into the top of Pisgah, and lift up thine eyes westward, and northward, and southward, and eastward, and behold it with thine eyes. For thou shalt not go over this Jordan, but charge Joshua, and encourage him, and strengthen him. For he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which thou shalt see. When he was done, I said, I don't get it. I mean, I know that Moses is talking there, and I know that story about how Moses didn't get to go into the promised land, but I don't see why Mrs. Morrison wanted me to read that before I prayed about it. I mean, except that it has Joshua in it, and Randy's going to be Joshua now. Dad looked down for a moment and then asked, how did Moses respond when he was asked to train Joshua? Sandy, my older sister, thought for a moment before she spoke. Moses obeyed and was content to train Joshua or to do whatever the Lord asked him to do. Dad then looked at me. How did you respond when asked to help Randy? Maybe you should consider Moses' example in his reactions, and then consider your reactions to the task before you. So Dad read it again, all the way through. Now, Mark, Mom said, why don't you take some time to pray about it right now? We'll pray for you too, and then ask the Lord to show you just what He wants you to do. But even before we prayed, I knew what the Lord wanted me to do. Okay, so just to kind of unpack this page, these Bible verses are talking about Moses and Joshua, right? So it seems like the comparison here is that although Mark was not chosen for the main part, I think the key point here it says, encourage him and strengthen him. So it's important for Mark to encourage and strengthen his classmate, Randy. So I'll stop the video here, and in the part 2, we will go over some of the questions in page 129, actually all of them. But before you watch part 2, please try to do this on your own. The directions say underline, so not circle, underline the phrase that makes each statement correct. So you're going to basically kind of kind of scan back to all of the pages we read so far, even from Tuesday, and finish each sentence so the sentence is correct. So go ahead and try that, and I'll see you in part 2. Bye!